Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the session on regenerative and nature-positive agriculture as an avenue to build climate-resilient food systems. We're joined by 5 esteemed panelists, and we're going to really frame this around as an informal conversation where we can go deep. I'm actually going to just have everyone first introduce themselves, the initiatives they're working on, and then we're just going to go around and have a conversation with one another. So first of all, my name is Patty Fong. I'm with the Global Alliance for the Future of Food. We're an alliance of philanthropies that's working together and with others to transform food systems and guided by a set of principles which include health, resilience, sustainability, diversity. And so this need to integrate all these various aspects together is really critical. We cannot tackle food systems in the context of climate change without also tackling resilience, and we cannot separate the issues of adaptation and mitigation. We can't separate the issues around biodiversity loss and ecosystems from the welfare and income of farmers and their communities. So I really want to hear from our guests here about the initiatives that they're working on and how their approach, and really explore the common, let's say, ingredients of success, of how to engage local communities, how to work together really towards an integrated approach. So first, I'll turn to Gaston.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you all for coming here in such busy schedules and running from one side to another. So it's a privilege to have you guys here with us. My name is Gaston Kremer. I'm from Brazil. I work in World Transforming Technologies, an NGO that fosters science, technology, and innovation for social impact. We have a very strong line of work in food systems, focusing on how to prepare innovation systems, national innovation systems, to work with the transition to agroecology practices, specifically in Brazil, but also looking to regenerative food businesses, what we're calling, and what broad perspective, a transition perspective in which we're trying to find out ways of creating indications, ways of conducting investment at the local level, such an important theme for what we're seeing here in the COP. So we'll keep chatting. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. I'm from India. I'm Vijay Kumar Tallam from Andhra Pradesh. It's a southern state. So I'm leading the Andhra Pradesh community managed natural farming, which is based on women's empowerment over the last 25 years in our state, and how building on this rich human networks, women networks, is enabling us to transition to climate resilient food systems, which, as Patty mentioned in the beginning, instead of looking at these things in silos, we need a solution which connects all these crises and presents a solution to each of these. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Michael Kototua Johnson. I'm a 250th generation Hopi farmer from Arizona. I'm an assistant specialist at the University of Arizona, tied to the Indigenous Resiliency Center and the School of Natural Resources and the Environment. My work focuses on indigenous agricultural systems, nutrition, biodiversity, and also water. And so a lot of my research is trying to figure out ways to increase the supply, not really upscale, but increase the supply of those crops which have been drought resistant or have been adapted to our communities for thousands of years. Because I think that's where the answer is. It's a lot of it. Part of it has to do with the plants that you raise, and a lot of them are place-based. So I'm just trying to not only bring those back, but also address some of the cultural concerns that my community has when we start to lose those crops. And so, thank you.
Namaste. I'm Prajuna Kesi from Nepal. I'm the country director for IDE. IDE has been in Nepal for 30 years, and our tagline is powering entrepreneurs to end poverty. We believe that each individual has the power to uplift themselves if given the proper ecosystem and strengthened market. So in the last 30 years, we've been listening to our farmers, our smallholder farmers, creating ecosystems from them, And when we talk about climate smart approaches, when we listen to farmers, their approaches are usually climate smart. It's the conventional agriculture that we've pushed them into, the market systems that were developed beyond their control that has pushed them into conventional agriculture. So when we listen to them, we are creating resilient and climate smart agriculture, and ID is working on agriculture, WASH with cross-cutting nutrition, and Jesse work as well, which I will deep dive into in our next conversations.
Hi, thanks everyone. My name is Nico Janssen. I work as a program manager agriculture livelihoods at the IKEA Foundation. Hearing that there's a 250th generation person next to me, I feel very, very young. We are just 15 years and counting as a foundation, so we're still discovering and learning. We just learned how to walk, I guess. But anyway, I think one of our main strategies that I'm working on in the foundation is how do we make food systems work for people, nature, and climate in a holistic manner. We're not looking for silver bullets, we're looking for holistic system solutions where we place farmers and indigenous peoples at the heart of the development. Working at grassroots, working on re-empowerment in a way of that to correct what we have maybe done wrong during the last few decades. And an important part of that work is also to, together with communities, together with local enterprises, build evidence around models in agroecology, models in regenerative agriculture that work, that can demonstrate to policymakers, to investors, to businesses that actually, there is a way out of this business of usual. And there's a role for everybody to play in there. Our main investments are in India and East Africa, where we work. We work, among others, with you. And in total, we have a group of about 40 partners we work with, but also on the ground, but also an active membership in like the Global Alliance for the Future of Food, where together as philanthropy, we try to raise the voice for the food system, that the food system needs to develop in a different direction than it has been in the past few years. And that it should become part of this forum as well. Food is not only a livelihood issue, food is a climate issue at the same time. And if we really want to stay within 1.5 degrees, that's where we have to put our efforts and our money.
Thank you. So some of the themes I heard from all of you around conventional agriculture, large-scale industrial extractive agriculture, which is basically creating pressures for smallholder farmers. And in fact, the solutions lie with local communities, indigenous communities, smallholder farmers, but they're being held back. So I want to focus more on the kind of positive, because we can talk for a long time on like what's, all the challenges. So from each of your perspectives, whether it's like creating the business, the market opportunities, empowering women, and so forth, what has been like the kind of maybe one of the primary levers that you have seen have worked in starting to open up the opportunities and starting to create the shifts bottom up for more agroecological regenerative agriculture?
Great. From the perspective of our organization, our lens on that, I would say innovation, those social innovations. Agroecology networks are highly innovative. They produce their own technical solutions. And what we see is a very sophisticated network of social technical solutions. For example, in the semi-arid region in Brazil, there is well-known programs, a government policy that reached 1 million harvest water systems that have a heavy social technology embedded, which is the way they disseminate this technology. And this was learned by government from social movements of smallholder farmers. So this is one specific case, but we see that also in networks of indigenous peoples in the Amazon region, right? How to deal with specific, and this is our language, value chains, but products that are so important to their livelihoods. And the traditional technology of, for example, terra preta, which I will translate freely, black earth, which is this very rich soil that we're all aiming at some point in different landscapes, but that is millennial knowledge from people that lived in the Amazon for all these years. So I would say that this transition to more ecological agricultures and to a system, food system that is more resilient, should be highly driven by the innovations that are produced by those smallholders. So our perspective is also how the innovation systems, that the hubs, all those English terms that they use, the startups, etc., can learn and work not for those communities, but with those communities, and also support the innovation driven by those communities. So this is a strong activity that we are moving forward, but we are very excited on acknowledging, and this is very common, right? To have to integrate intercultural knowledge, traditional knowledge, but the how-to is where we are putting our efforts.
So I really liked how you're framing this around innovation with a specific focus on social innovation, because there is a focus on innovation in the climate agenda, but it's very specific. If you talk to innovation experts more broadly, they'll say it's not just technological, it's social. But for some reason, when there's conversations around innovation in the climate agenda, it's focused on top-down technology. And I think we need to reclaim that and own that and say, innovation comes in many forms and comes from many sources. So Vijay, in Andhra Pradesh, your women leaders have been innovating also on the ground. So tell us about how that's happening.
Thank you. I agree with him. The social innovation is the key. And as I mentioned, in Andhra Pradesh, we would like to see all farmers transitioning. So we have 6 million farmers and 2 million landless farm worker households. So around 8 million families to move to zero chemical, natural farming transition. And that our plan is that enrollment should happen by 2031, another 7-8 years, and add another 4-5 years for the whole area to come under this. So that's the plan. And this builds on, I would say, about 4 innovations. The first one has been the foundation which we built through strong women self-help groups. So that started 25 years ago. It had nothing to do with climate or anything. It was around their livelihoods, around how they can ensure that they can come out of poverty, multiple dimensions. So they, became good clients with the banks. So there was financial inclusion, livelihoods inclusion, social inclusion. So they already won a lot of victories on many parameters. And so they were ready to take this challenge. So building this kind of networks has been the first and I would say most fundamental innovation. The second, the knowledge, the technology innovations have also been very, very critical. And this technology is not some smart technology or artificial technology. This is around understanding Mother Nature. Mother Nature is perfect. Our interpretation is wrong. So can we improve our interpretation of the principles of nature? Can we mimic them? Can we imitate them? Can we imitate the forest ecosystem? So that led to a series of breakthroughs for us, starting with, in fact, for me, the real breakthrough moment was when I realized that you do not need a single gram of either chemical fertilizer or organic fertilizer. Nobody puts fertilizers in the forest. So then that led us to understanding of how the nutrient cycling happens. And then from there, we derived the principles of natural farming, which guide the practices. And that is basically universal, like, having a living root green cover 365 days of the year, having as much crop diversity as possible, no disturbance of soils, and then use biological inoculum, what we get from our animal dung, urine, etc., not as a fertilizer. So we just need about 5% of what is typically said that you need so much of organic fertilizer. So this was really a breakthrough for us, that we have a technology which is a do-it-yourself technology, not depend on any input supply chains, and something which every farmer can do by herself. And we keep improving on this year after year, so that the transition is a very effortless kind of transition. So we've learned a lot of things in this. So I believe the technology innovations, which are based on learning from Mother Nature, are extremely critical, and they can actually accelerate the transformation. And in this journey, one of the most important, again, breakthrough moments which helps the semi-arid areas across the world is the discovery that we can have plants, harness water from the air as a means of irrigation. No technology, just by improving the soil biology, plants are able to do that. So this enabled us to have year-long green cover, crop biodiversity. So I would say technological innovations which are based on principles of nature, which are also those which can be taken to people and they can adopt it quickly. But who will take it to people? That's the third innovation. So we believe that the best practicing farmers are the best scientists and also the best trainers, because they're putting their lives at stake. It's not just a question of publishing a research paper. So we built this ecosystem of champion farmers who then take this knowledge to others. So we now have an army of around 10,000 such people. That's how we've been able to reach to 1.1 million farmers and farm workers. So the third innovation was the extension system, the way the knowledge is taken to farmers. And the other basic, I wouldn't say innovation, but then the collaborations, including the partnership with the Global Alliance, the IKEA Foundation, C4ICRAF. So when the best institutions come together to solve problems of the people, so this collaboration enriches both. And finally, government. Changing things in government is also a great innovation. And it helped because I'm part of the government. So it's like, tweaking within the government to make government a partner of people in this transformation. Yeah, thank you.
Professor Michael, do you want to go into, you can take the innovation angle or maybe some other angle that you want to enter and then complement the conversation?
No, I had like a quick 2-minute presentation that kind of sums up everything right here that I would like to kind of talk about, because we're talking about the different aspects of, integrating something. Hopi, we're an outlier because we don't use irrigation to raise our crops, and we only have 6 to 10 inches of annual rainfall a year. And so our crops have adjusted to climate over all these years, but it's kind of a picture of what it would look like, what everybody's talking about bringing in different types of innovation, because we came up with our own ways to innovate too, even in today's climate crisis. So if I could, I would like to run those 5 slides that I have up there. Okay, so this is just an outlier part of my field. So go ahead next. So, when we're defining this and we're talking about social values, so what I did was I turned this regenerative agricultural definition and I add something that is important for survival, which are supported by cultural belief systems and community incorporated over millennia. Now, that's very important. When we talk about social systems and what makes our system so resilient and what makes the 80% of global biodiversity is right now is this. It's not the techniques and processes, but the actual belief system that backs these up. Go ahead, next. So indigenous ingenuity is the key. So right now we have, place-based cropping system. Those crops that were grown there before have survived drought. We've had 200-year droughts in our area, and we're still doing this. Now, remember, this is without irrigation, and we're still producing this type of crops. Look at the biodiversity that exists right here. This is in North America. The the biodiversity of these crops is very important, meaning that when we get one disease, it won't spread to another plant. You know, look at the drought resistance of this plant. This is going through a drought, and look how thriving that plant is. We plant anywhere down from 6 inches to 1.5 feet deep, and that's incredible for corn. So this corn has been adapted for 3,000 years in this place. The next picture. So it's also crop biodiversity, environmental sustainability, and the other one that was on there. But some of the problems that we do have and some of the challenges is still that we still lack land tenure insecurity. In the United States, we have the right to occupancy, but we do not have the right to title. That's throughout the globe. So that's one of the big issues that we need to talk about. This lack of natural resource data, which I'm working on. So to validate all the points that I've just made, we need to have the data there. Also, the financial capital is also very important. But one of the most important things is our intellectual property rights need to be secured so that we can move on. We just don't want to give these crops away and then not benefit from that. So the data sovereignty is very important when it comes to dealing with indigenous people, which we don't really talk about. Why? Because people don't want to give up their rights to finding something new when it's not their place to do that in the first place, and I'll say it that way. But other than that, I just wanted to give you a short glimpse into what we're kind of talking about, at least what I'm talking about, and how we're able to take a system that's been so well secured and kind of bring it to the point where everybody can understand it and show the value of it. And I hope that makes sense, but I just wanted to leave it at that. So,
Thank you, Michael. And Pradrina, I think it would be good if actually you wanted to go around again, but each of you comes from a different context and a different country. So maybe you can go a bit into the situation in Nepal. Perhaps it's not drought, something else, but what's the context in which the communities that you're working with?
Sure, thank you. I was actually thinking along the lines of innovation, and I'll tell you how it ties up. In Nepal, you see a lot of out-migration now, and why that's happening is farming is not as profitable at this point. So all of you who are in Dubai, I'm sure if you look around in your hotel rooms, in the lobby, in the security guard, you'll see a lot of Nepalese people here. So what's that leaving us with a lot of females having to now bear on triple burden of taking care of the home, taking care of the children, and the land. So that's the reality of Nepal, with barren lands, of course, because a lot of people have migrated out for better job opportunities. So one of the problems is we are not making farming as profitable. So the innovation needs to happen at our end is how do we make it profitable? If they are doing not conventional farming, but the climate smart, resilient farming, how are we going to make it more profitable for them? So in the innovation angle, what I was thinking was the communities that we work with, they already know what the gap is. They know what they want. What they don't know is in what innovative way they want it. And I can illustrate in an example. So one of the major crises that we have in farming is a lack of fertilizer, or not lack of, but we need around 700,000 tons of fertilizer, and we are only able to import around 300,000 a year. And that leaves us with a 400,000 ton of deficiency of fertilizer. So when we were talking to the farmers around Nepal, so how do we innovate? How do we help them create fertilizers at their own home? So what do they have at their home? Like Professor was mentioning, they have the farmyard manure that they've been using for many, many years. So how do we innovate so we make this more profitable for them to use? So what we did was, going back to nature, we had tested this trichoderma fungus, and then we inoculated with our vermicompost. And we started experimenting over 3 harvest seasons, and we saw a 15% yield increase. And we actually saw that it increases the soil health, the carbon sequestration as well. So innovation might come from networks like ours that are constantly learning what's important, what are the new things that we can introduce to the communities. So that innovation helped farmers not only to have fertilizers for their own use, but we are also working with cooperatives to help them manufacture it at their level and standardize it. You know, go to government labs, get it tested, so there's a certain standardization. So if they're able to produce more, not only can they use it at their own homes, but also sell it for a profit. We got to start looking at farmers not as beneficiaries. They are clients. They are business people. If there's no profit for them, they're not going to do it. So at IDE, that's what we do. That's what we look at differently. We really put farmers at the center. We believe in human-centered design, and we've listened to them. And all our innovations have come through just listening to them, understanding what's their requirement, and innovating to their needs.
Should I bring you at the end, Nico, or you want to comment now? Tell me if you want to jump in on a comment. Okay, I want to turn back to Vijay if I can. I'm guessing if you probably have maybe some, you were nodding when she was explaining the kind of the challenges that women were facing. And I was wondering if you can elaborate, like the similarities that you were working with in Andhra Pradesh, maybe some differences and yeah.
No, I was really agreeing with her that farmers are fleeing because it's not profitable and women are overburdened. And what we realize is that this farming can be very, very profitable, not 10-15%. My goal is it should increase incomes 3 to 5 times. And then the youth come rushing back. So I've seen cases where women have called their husbands back. So they're working in Bangalore, nearby. They said, look, we can make more money here than what you're doing there. So I see that as a challenge. That how can I make this transition not just, as they say, from not just not painful, but highly profitable. And that's where organizations need to invest. And we have a model, maybe you can take it to Nepal, in 800 square meters of land, 1/5 of acre. We call it ATM, Anytime Money Model. So in that 800 square meters of land, they take 18-20 kinds of vegetables, lentils, and millets. And they can harvest throughout the year. And so they're eating healthy. There's no food security issue as far as, apart from the grains. Grains anyway, they'll produce well. The second innovation has been around each major crop, and I really like Professor's concept of crop biodiversity. So whether it is rice, of course, has been difficult, but we're trying in rice also. But every crop, if you take a maize crop, you have crop biodiversity there. So we have 4 or 5 crops. So the crop geometry is designed such a way that you have some short duration crops, medium duration, crops growing tall, crops growing short. So this crop geometry synergize among themselves. And then we have some 20-25 crops which we call as biodiversity seeds, just 5% of the totals. That is taking care of pest management, is taking care of some small nutrition requirement of green leafy vegetables. So these innovations are giving us a lot of hope that we can get more incomes, more regular incomes from diverse crops, withstand either droughts or heavy rainfalls. And with this crop diversity, we find that the nutrition value of food is also going up. So that means better health. And this crop diversity is also leading to above ground biodiversity in terms of pollinators, birds, predators, pests. Of course, they don't know they are pests. There are some living creatures there who are eating what we think is only for us. So this below ground soil biodiversity is triggering all this. So they look very simple, but if you put them together, the results are enormous. So technology breakthrough, but in a context of the people's innovations. And the issue is that I just wanted to, we don't treat the biological part as fertilizer. So we need only 5%. That's a big innovation. People are relieved. I don't need 10 tons of farmyard manure or 20 tons of farmyard manure because that's also very expensive. So we just need 400 kilograms per acre per crop, where previously they would have put 10 tons, 15 tons. So these innovations are important in making it accessible to small and marginal farmers.
Gaston, I was wondering if you can elaborate from the Brazilian context. Are you seeing similarities in what local communities are facing? And also just a bit more on, you focus a lot on building markets as well as basically creating demand if you're trying to shift the supply?
Yeah, I think what resonates a lot with Professor Michael brought, and also this approach of generating income. It's about transforming people's lives with autonomy, with prosperity, right? I believe it's about that. It's about ecology. It's about our existence, but one aspect that is very important is to creating this prosperity. One way that we are looking in the Brazilian context, specifically in the Amazon, looking at the Pan-Amazon region and also the dry corridor with this initiative, this consortium of organizations that reached the concept of regenerative food business, is this need of generating evidence and a path to the transition, right? How to measure those things and how to translate what we measure to investments, so we can bring resources to the local level, as Professor Michael was saying. And we did a very strong research, paper research, scientific research, but also in great publications about the understanding of regenerative agriculture, which is, it is clear for us, we weren't talking about bad things, but is a concept in dispute, right? Regenerative agriculture. There are big companies using it, that peoples are using it. So we have to understand what is that. And in that sense, we focused on the transition, which elements were important. And a common thing here that I'm finding is to how we measure those other things. Women's empowerment, it's very important. Empowerment is a word also that is being overused, but how we measure the equality that those kind of systems center on the ecology bring. So we're experimenting on that. After definitions, concepts of vast research, we are building cases and experimenting with investments. And in a few months, we'll have some results that we hope that will drag us to more questions.
I just wanted to say the basis for the other innovations was the fact that if you improve the soil biology with these practices, you have a very new concept of water. We only think of blue water, but what we are able to see through these innovations is that the plants are able to harness water from the air. So even in semi-arid, dry lands, we are able to get crops. And that's what led to this 365 days green cover, ATM models. So that innovation was very helpful in this.
Michael, I want to turn to you because in your presentation, you talked about how you are trying to generate evidence. And, one of the reasons why conventional agriculture has a strong foothold is that we're only looking for generate evidence for the questions that we're looking to that we're asking, right? So we're asking around overall productivity, and then what you're using to measure against that is going to then influence the outcomes and reinforcing that. And so many of the practices that you all have been promoting, the argument is that the evidence is not there, but it's because we aren't measuring it. So maybe you can tell us a bit about your story, about what led you to your work of trying to build the evidence base. Because also for indigenous peoples, your evidence traditionally has not been so quantitative, right? It's been very qualitative, and that is difficult in a modern society where we're so centered around numbers, specific numbers, and almost disaggregating everything rather than looking at the interactions holistically. And so how are you trying to break that mold with your evidence that you're generating?
This is a statistic that I like to talk about. For every American Indian child born in America, 50% of them have a chance to have diabetes nowadays. 50%. There's reservations in America that have an 88% diabetic rate. So when I look at our country and how wealthy it is, I say, what kind of evidence, what kind of studies are you using to look at our food system? So what I want to focus on more, and what I have been focusing on, is changing the market system to look at the quality of the things they're producing rather than going through the lens of quantity and efficiency. Because when you have those two variables put together, you have a lot of chaos. You have a lot of pesticides, herbicides, and all the stuff you like to use. I'm not going to knock those down. I'm not going to do that. But what I would like to look at is to frame it in the sense of the quality of the things we're producing rather than the quantity. Then we can bring in more small farmers. The profitability is not only going to be terms in dollars, but it's going to be terms in terms of human well-being, which we seem to be really missing in a lot of parts of the world, right? And so the data that I'm looking for is to have studies that look at, for example, look at the soils. What are the soils capable of doing? What kind of nutrients are involved in those soils? Because a lot of people don't realize is that we are what we eat. So when you have a crop, when you have a ground that's like full of glyphosate, you have things like cancer that are prevalent now in the United States in the Midwest. But when you look at the natural amenities like our soils, we don't add any of that stuff. You know, in the mineral content and the vitality of those is 10 times higher. Our corn is 10 times higher, more minerally than the stuff we buy in the supermarket, because it's taking what everybody's talking about, nature. Nature gives you everything you need to have, folks, but do we slow down enough to watch the little ant cross the road? Probably not, right? And so that's how I kind of look at that in the perspective as far as it's the kind of data that we are. And it's not aggregate data, it's disaggregate data, so we get a bigger picture of that. And I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Nico, I want to look at you before I go back to Padrina. So the FAO put out a roadmap draft. First draft, always difficult, not as good as you want it to be. And I was wondering if you can comment on, I saw indicators of it last night, and it's actually not going towards quality. It's reinforcing measures around efficiency of fertilizer use, efficiency of chemical use, efficiency of water use, and it's actually reinforcing conventional systems rather than supporting this transformation. So I don't know if you're able to comment, Nico, on whether you've seen that draft or maybe some of the challenges that you're seeing systemically at a global level, what's driving in terms of like the thinking from policymakers, UN institutions, and what needs to change there in order to really provide this supportive or enabling environment for these types of initiatives to thrive?
Yeah, thanks for that, Patty, and thanks for all the panelists with super inspiring stories. And that's actually what we love to do also as a funder, you know, is to bring these stories to the surface where they can be heard. I haven't fully read the roadmap yet, and I have to say, I used to work for FAO, so I'm not going to bash anybody here, because that is not my role. That's not what we like to do. But yeah, we like to see a food system that is not just based on technology, but that is based on principles around fairness, justness, equity, in which people, communities are empowered to make the choice of development that they feel is good for them, that is in balance with nature, that is in balance with culture, that is in balance with identity, in a way. And I think that's also why we work together a lot with the Global Alliance, but also why we started, for instance, an initiative like Region 10, where in a counter move, basically, to what the business was claiming as a certain domain, is to say, no, let's keep that domain in the public sector, in the hands of society, and let society define what that is. Let farmers define what regenerative is. Let indigenous people define what regenerative is. And then empower them to go into dialogue with business. These are the terms upon which we want to work with you, and not the other way around. So yeah, that's a steep uphill climb in a way to do that. But it's, if we really want to change the food system, if we really want to change that, I think we have to get out of thinking in terms of food in only calorie value or whatever, because then we get indeed the obesity and the diabetes or the total malnutrition, because food was expressed in food security, which actually equaled grain security. It was never food security. It's grain security. Do we have enough maize, rice, whatever in the barn? And then we're safe. So I think that thinking is slowly evolving. There's slowly a new narrative emerging indeed. And I can imagine that for a UN agency, which is supposed to be neutral, that it's for them also very, very difficult to balance that game. And I think in this roadmap, you can see that struggle. You can really see that, we are at a crossroads at the moment. And because for many countries, their primary responsibility for all its citizens is to provide that food security or that nutrition security or that healthy diet. But I think, we've somehow along that road, we've lost the direction of travel a bit. And we're now in a panic mode, in a sense, with multiple crises following up on each other, we're rapidly trying to learn and discover what's next. And we know where not to go, but we may not have all the answers yet where we have to go. But what we do know is that it's no longer a blueprint situation as we have been used to in the past. That it's really the next food system really will have to be a local context-specific, solution-based food system that respects that diversity, and that we have to learn to celebrate diversity and not all become people eating the same diet all over the world, because that's going to be super boring.
So even this whole concept of food security, I struggle with, because it almost implies a disempowerment of citizens, because, they need to be fed, almost like they need a handout to feel secure, when actually it's a mindset shift to really think differently about, are they able to have the power, really the power and choices to kind of provide for themselves, for their communities, interact with their communities. So Pradyumna, I want to turn to you, as country director. I'm assuming you're working a lot with the Nepalese government. What is the challenge that you face? Are there differences in views? Are they aligned with you in terms of what you're trying to do and working with local communities? And maybe give us some insight on the conversations that you're having.
There's a lot of alignment, and I think that's good because, necessity is the mother of invention or innovation for us. And I think we're all there. We know what's happening. When you're traveling to rural parts of Nepal, you might not see them eating nutritious food, but you'll see them eating these instant noodles. You'll see them eating these instant wafers and chips. And I was actually mentioning that in the previous discussion as well. And that's where we are at in terms of talking about nutrition. So what's food security? Them having instant noodles or them having nutritious food, which is actually available on the ground. So the conversations at the government level, they are very positive in the sense we all are looking at the same thing. And we had just had a session where the government delegates were also involved. And they said the same thing that Nico did. We don't have a blueprint right now. We need to be agile. We really need to contextualize, localize what we are doing. And what I love about our tagline is we say we help communities define their own prosperity. We can't define prosperity for them. When we're talking about women's empowerment, the word that's often used, who is defining empowerment for them? Them having these three burdens and then also having a business, does that empower them? Or them saying, it's enough. I'm happy just being a farmer and making subsistence farming. Who are we to define what empowerment means for another individual? So that agility and that willingness to let them define their own prosperity is, in our conversation, I think government is also open to at least having us contextualize and localize a lot of these blueprints that we are looking to taking forward.
Gaston, is there similar alignment in Brazil?
We are in a new moment in Brazil after rough years of governments that were in the 70s, in the Green Revolution 4.0, and very politically about invisibilize. No, I'm inventing words at this point. or not giving any visibility to those process of the network of organizations of smallholders in Brazil. So we've come through very rough years. Now there is an openness in the government. There are very interesting programs of and looking at gender, looking at access to credit, but we have very rough data in Brazil. For example, 70% of the Plano Safra, which is are billions and billions of credit per year, 70% go, more than 70 actually, go to maize and soy. And the first tier of it's credit for smallholders, which is up to, let me do a conversion here, a little bit less than $2,000. That goes to the farmers very cheaply, very well. It's at the end, it's not measured and is working more as income distribution than to program tied to production or food system and demanding also this kind of, or attaching or looking with what smallholders want to do with their life. So I think this unmatching on the credit is something very strong in Brazil, for example. And in the context of innovation, we now are working closely with government, helping them to design open calls for designing machinery adequate to the different biomes in Brazil. So that's very interesting. We're getting signs that it's possible to shift this national innovation systems with the participation of farmers, but it's still a long road to go.
And Vijay, in India, I mean, the state of Andhra Pradesh is quite progressive, but overall in India, there's still one of the biggest users of fertilizer. So do you see, I mean, and it's a big issue under the banner of food security for the country. So how do you see the challenge? Do you see shifts happening in mindsets?
It is happening, but not as fast as I would like it to happen. And it's happening for a variety of reasons. Many states have actually come to me. And in India, a state is like a country. So many states have realized that this is good for people, prosperity, climate. But the fertilizer subsidy is also hurting the government. So about $27 billion of subsidy every year. So the central government also decided that let's, promote natural farming, at the same time incentivize states which move faster. So the state governments have this is something decision taken this year. So any state which reduces its fertilizer consumption below an expected growth rate, so the reduction in fertilizer consumption, 50% of that is passed on to the state as a grant to take natural farming forward. So this, again, from the financing of the transition, this is a great decision. And similarly, in my own state government, I was able to establish that natural farming reduces water consumption by 30 to 50%. And therefore, the energy required to pump water is reduced. So similar negotiations are happening at the state government level, that 50% of this saving will be passed on to my organization, government organization, to promote natural farming. So both sides, one is from the benefit stream, the other is in cutting down costs. So I do see a positive movement, but as I said, not as fast as I would like it to be.
So I want to wrap up. We've just got a few minutes left in this session. I want to start with Michael. Just final reflections from this conversation, something that you want everyone in the room to kind of take away from this discussion?
You know, unless we move away from, the almighty dollar, I don't think that we're going to get too far in following the climate crisis. So I really, would really like to push, we need to really look at our values. I mean, honestly, that's the thing that's going to change. As an individual, we need to look at our values, because the monetary things that we're talking about, the purchase of fertilizer, the due systems, they're all doomed to fail, honestly. And you have to look at what's important in our lives. And I think so. I'm just going to keep focusing on my values, and I'm not giving up hope, And so that's I kind of want to leave it at that. But thank you.
As we go on to define regenerative agriculture or smart agriculture and define matrices that help us know what they are, I think at this point there's 158 measures of regenerative agriculture, and it's probably growing. But as we go home and as we continue to do our work that we do, to remain agile in terms of listening to the people that we are working with, agility in how we are doing our interventions, agility in how we are talking to the government, making sure that the systems are agile to adapt to the changes that's happening. So that's the message I want to give as you move on. Keep the agility with you when you listen to the communities. Keep the agility in the programs that you're running, and the supporters, the partners that are out there, to be agile as they're supporting us in this journey.
Yeah, thanks. I think that this transforming food systems, it's a journey. It's not just a light switch that we flick, and then all of a sudden it's changed. So, and it's hopefully a journey that we can make inclusive and that we can go together. There's enough conflict already in the world, We don't need more conflict also within the food system stakeholders on where we need to go. I think we have to be willing to listen to each other, to learn together, to show evidence to each other, that these are better solutions that maybe don't have to feel as a threat, but that feel as an opportunity to change. And if we then, because then we avoid polarization and actually refill the middle instead of pushing each other further and further away into a polarized world, because that's not where we need to go.
Thank you for that, Nico. I think I acknowledge the Hopi wisdom, and I think we should acknowledge many indigenous people wisdom. And unfortunately, one way we should do that is making the money, the finance come to those kind of producers, those kind of smallholders that are in the Amazon, in the direct corridor, in the Middle West, fighting, or because the conflict is there, Nico. Unfortunately, we have to live with it. And I think one way of balancing and seeing this complexity, and that we should focus a lot, is to creating transition funds to make the resources get to those places, not to replicate, to gain scale, or in the way that the mainstream agriculture is doing, but to replicate and to reinforce ecological positive agriculture. So I believe one important message is, let's make the climate finance, the business finance, every finance to reach smallholders.
Thank you. While agreeing with the panel, I just want to add that we need to do it fast. There's no time. Thank you.
Please join me in thanking the speakers, panelists, for sharing their insights and their stories. I wish you a good rest of your day.